This is the Collecting Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Purse, here with your co-host, Bill Hamill.
I'm somewhat more comfortable collecting real estate than I am collecting other stuff.
This is the Collecting Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Purse, here as always with your co-host, Bill Hamill. This morning we interviewed Anthony Vander Meer from Brightside Capital. Anthony resides in Brooklyn, New York, invests in Brooklyn and upstate New York, and in a couple other states through partnerships. Bill, what do you think about today's interview?
You can make money anywhere. We discussed that for quite a while here. We're investing in New York. I've invested in New York for a long time. And most recently, it's been very, very difficult or more difficult to do business in New York, specifically real estate. Anthony's making money in New York and Massachusetts, both not very friendly landlord states, but a lot of opportunity, and he's making it happen.
You can make money anywhere. That was a great takeaway from today's episode. We also discussed investing in New York City, a difficult market, the feeling of chasing satisfaction, what it's like to host a short-term rental, to self-manage while you also work W-2, and then partnerships and how that lets you expand your portfolio. A lot of great stuff today.
And it's enjoying that process. And it's not easy.
Excited for today's podcast. It's the holiday season, so everything's a little bit more exciting. Recording this the morning of December 21st. Also excited because this is a fellow investor and a friend, Anthony Vander Meer from Brightside Capital. Excited to hear more about your story, how you got into real estate investing. So let's get right into it. Tell us how you got into the real estate industry.
Okay, sure. Well, first of all, I am an avid listener, so I appreciate you guys having me on. You guys rock. So great podcast, and I'm really happy to be here. And as far as how I got into real estate, if you don't mind, I almost want to back up briefly and kind of go over my own W-2 and kind of how my W-2 kind of catapulted me into real estate. So I'm a high achiever in the sales world. And so I slowly worked my way through the corporate W-2 sales world and got myself up to 20% in the company. Thought, all right, that's gonna make me happy, right? Didn't make me happy. Got into 10%, still thought, all right, there's more to go. Got in the top 5% nationwide company. I'm like, this has got to be it. No, unfortunately, no real sense of pride. Got myself all the way into individualize the top 10 people in the company. And Bill, do you think I had this euphoric moment where I was happy at that point, or? The answer is no, not at all. So,
well, I'm sitting here thinking, Anthony, I wasn't expecting this because we haven't talked about this mini journey through your W-2 and being such a top producer, but not being satisfied. I'm just consuming this here.
Yeah, and it's and not to say if someone else had the exact same job as me, they might feel that personal satisfaction, and by all means, they should. I actually think it's a defect on my end that I was not feeling that, but I did what most people did. I searched around, was still aggressive in my W-2, doing what I needed to do on that end, but picked up the old, hate to be a cliche, picked up the old Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I saw that book for years, and perspective-wise, I didn't like the title, so I didn't read it, which is absurd because I read every book on self-help, but read it and had that was my aha moment. That's going to be what I'm going to do, for my retirement, for extra cash flow. So read the book, searched around, did a lot on Bigger Pockets, all the same things that most people do. Looked at buying single families, foreclosure type properties. And I just kept getting outbid, one after the next. And then I found a 10 unit. And the 10 unit, I kept doing the numbers. I would wake up at like 4 a.m, redo the numbers, be like, there's no way this can make sense. And it made perfect sense. As you guys know, the more units, the more it makes sense than a single family. So Pulled the trigger on that one about 3 years ago, right at the beginning of COVID, and haven't looked back since.
Yeah, I know I talked to you about this 10 unit when we first met, which sounded interesting. We're comparing notes about how involved you were in that process. But stepping back, I know that you got involved in real estate back in 2010. I think you got into some single families. Tell us about that journey from the single families, over 10 years ago, leading to that 10 unit.
So it wasn't even on purpose. I bought a apartment in a condo apartment in an up and coming neighborhood in Brooklyn. And I bought it. It was, we bought it. You buy the floor plan. So you buy a floor plan. You don't see, you don't get to see anything of the apartment. You plunk down 10%. You wait a year, maybe 18 months. You get yourself the apartment once it's fully built, right, in a 30-story building. So we did that, and we held that thing for a year and made like 140K on it. And I was like, this is amazing, So it's like, so we flipped that, and we did it again, and then we did it again. So it's almost, I've never heard of the concept, but it's like a live and flip without actually doing any construction, because you're paying in advance. You're giving your money to the second property we did. We put that 10% down before we even were out of our first one. So that one, the second one actually doubled. And then we did it again into our current apartment. Or our current house, I should say. So it's a live and flip without construction by just putting money down in advance, as opposed to doing the typical kind of mortgage route, get your apartment in a few months, or your house, I should say, in a few months.
The only thing I could think of there, just because of the years, knowing that recession, the Great Recession, hit around 2008-ish, and people were doing that on buying new construction, same idea, you're just buying dirt, and then by the time it's built, you're able to resell it for this major profit. But once 2008, 2009 hit, that just blew up. What was the timing where you were able to accomplish those?
I closed on the first apartment the day Lehman Brothers collapsed. So we're in a law firm, in a real estate law firm in downtown Manhattan, blocks away from Lehman, and we're just watching the TV as the world is imploding. And the lawyer at the time said, if this closing date was tomorrow, you'd not be closing. You'd be losing money. You'd be out. So we hit it perfectly, and we wrote it. We wrote it for we also bought it right. We bought that thing a year in advance. So we bought it for $440, and even in a down market, we sold it for $580 and $590, I think. And then we rolled that in to the next apartment, the next house, the next condo. That one was also, it was a down economy. So not a down economy, but it wasn't the Brooklyn of today, which is just still chugging along with massive growth. So we got into that one at a little bit of a better deal. And that one was actually where we caught a huge double. But yeah, so it was one of those things where as you guys know, if you buy correctly, either a multifamily or a primary residence, it doesn't matter what the economy's doing. You can still sell it and make some cash off it.
Buying correctly. That's the most important piece of the puzzle here. I want to take a step back to when you said chasing a sense of pride, chasing that satisfaction. Bill and I say almost all of these episodes go back to mentality somehow. And it's so true that you can chase that and it might not change that satisfaction. Bill's a runner. You can relate that to running. You chase that PR or that qualification, and then you finally get it and you feel like the same person. Even in real estate, you get that 2 unit and it feels like you hit the lotto, you're the best thing ever. But then you get the 8 or the next one and nothing changes around you. You're always chasing that satisfaction. So that's to come from somewhere else. But to get back to your real estate story, I love hearing a fellow New York investor. The average investor does not want to invest in New York. They look at you crazy if you say you do invest in New York. And then on top of that, you're investing in New York City. That's an intimidating market. You started out in New York City. Did you continue to invest in New York City? Is that still where you analyze and look for deals?
No, I mean, I'm mostly, so my primary residence are in New York. That's almost where I consider the appreciation. But then I got like many Brooklynites do, I got a second home in upstate New York, about an hour and a half from you guys in Ulster County. And that's where, because in Brooklyn, we're home of the three cap. Everyone's talking about, three caps last year. Brooklyn's always been a terrible cap rate for multifamily. So I always tried getting in here and just couldn't do it. And, didn't see, I'm a cash flow guy. Didn't see the cash flow. It was strictly appreciation plays, which is a little bit of gambling at times. So got a place in upstate and, started looking at cap rates up there, and we're finding those 9 and 10 cap rates that you need to well, maybe, 9 and 10 is great now, but what, 8, 9, 10 that you need to really make cash flow. So that's where I keep my primary in New York, but 2 hours away is where I really started building the small multifamily portfolio.
Fantastic. Traveling a little bit upstate, seeing a little bit more potential, a little more cash flow than you're ever going to see in Brooklyn. Yeah, there's a time and a place for a Brooklyn market, but not for you in the beginning of your career. So you get to Ulster County, your second home, and what, you stumble into a fixer-upper 10 unit? Tell us how you stumbled into that.
Yeah, so I was looking for a year with a regular residential broker, just looking, finding things that just didn't make sense. And it was on market. I did my old bigger pockets calculator, saw the numbers, made sense. It was beat up, it was beat up. It was still a decent NOI. So I did the typical 20% down. Bought it, drove by it, and I was like, okay, look, there it is. So we're doing good, and kept the rents for a little, that was right at COVID, so kept the rents where, right kind of, just to stabilize them, left them where they were until we got a little bit over COVID, and then so I raised those rents a fair amount to get kind of the cash flow coming in, even without the raising of rents. It was, cash flow about $200 a month. So I took that, kind of let it ride, found another 4 unit, which was also real. This was more beat up. So took that one, did the old HELOC with my house, and which I've done a bunch. And I pulled the money I pulled the equity out of my Brooklyn house, bought that cash, fixed it up cash, refied back out of it. So now that is giving me another $2,000 in cash flow. So now I'm up to 6, right? So I'm like, all right, this is okay. Saved up that a little bit, and then went and bought the 8 unit. So the 8 unit, which sounds a lot like one of Steven's properties he was talking about. What this one was, well, actually, this one was, there was no one in it. It was a abandoned building. That one is where I really cut my teeth on construction. So managed that whole project. 8 unit came with a lot of lumps, but that one was another cash purchase, and with the HELOC, and then did construction on it, and pretty much rehab the entire building. Got that thing rented in 6 months, which was great. Now my cash flow goes up, so then I'm at like about 10K in cash flow. So now I take that 10K and start remodeling the 10 unit. So it's almost like I worked in reverse. I let the 10 unit ride, renovated, pretty much 12 units consistently over a year, took that cash flow, started renovating the 10 unit with it. So now I'm up to, out of the 22 units in upstate, I'm up to 18 are fully renovated and pretty much guts. So now I got, at the end of this month with my new leases, I'll be at, 15K in cash flow. So it's been, my whole philosophy in the beginning, whether right or wrong, was just cash flow, just find the cash flow. So I have a ton of equity in the properties, but for me, it was really to get that machine going, that cash flow machine. And I still have a little bit of runway with these properties, but for me, I was just really renovating them using my own dime from the W-2. Besides the cash flow, I was obviously putting some in. And in all honesty, I didn't have much help in the beginning. Bill, we've talked about this. I was doing it, I was doing a lot of it on my own as far as the management goes. But I will say that most people think like self-manage is like a dude with a beat up pickup and a rake hanging out the back. I have completely subbed everything out. So I have a real estate broker that leases. I have a handyman where all my tenants call the handyman first. They don't call me. They call him if there's an issue. He fixes it. If it's over $500, he calls me. If it's not, he takes care of it. From the get-go, I use Buildium software, right? Even though I only had a 10 unit, started with Buildium. All my tenants, it's in the lease. If you want to pay with a check, your rent is increased by $50. So you got to pay through the portal. And I tell them, if you don't want to pay through the portal, it's fine. But I'd rather not take your $50. I'd rather have you pay through the portal. But then I also set up with the local bank where they can drop off the checks there, and the local bank deposits my account with the memo to where it's from. So I deal with no money transactions. I pretty much, at this point, I most likely will go property management sooner or later. But at the time, it was more of a necessity. There was just no one good up there. So I had to do it on my own. So I subbed it all out, and I'm still saving $2,500 a month by not going property management. I mean, is it worth it? Tough to say, but as far as a necessity goes, I was able to sub everything out and not do a thing myself.
That's great stuff. That's right out of a multifamily textbook there. I think the average person, their biggest hesitancy to get into real estate investing, multifamily, is the management side of it. Those late phone calls everyone hears about, the tenant relationship aspect. And you're building this portfolio that's not too far away, but it's certainly not in your backyard, and you're finding a way to handle it all. You're building systems. Do you think that success, that ability to build systems, comes from your career that you have in corporate America, where you've learned how to build a business?
Yeah, I think they're very intertwinable. It's literally the same thing. I sell, capital healthcare equipment. So, issues happen all the time. There's nothing that can happen in a rental property that's going to be worse than something that's going to happen selling, a piece of equipment to a doctor in New York City. The doctor will get way more pissed than a tenant ever will. So I'm not too scared on that end. But it is, they're I think almost anything in business, it's all very similar. It's about building that machine that is self-propelling, that works on its own. And don't get me wrong, you don't build it to slack. You build it to then go after either the next building, the next client, whatever it is. So the corporate America job kind of really, that gig kind of almost trained me a little bit in how to deal with owners and tenants and all that as far as real estate is concerned.
Yeah, exactly. My thought as you finish up your thought in your sentence there, it's becoming a great communicator. Where if you're dealing with doctors, because nothing's perfect, you're selling medical devices, and every now and then you have a problem, and you have to communicate properly with an angry doctor to rectify that situation as best you can. No differently than when we're dealing with tenants. I appreciate how in Saugerties, you didn't have a great property manager option, so you have to be a problem solver. You put the pieces together with your handyman, the Buildium software, utilizing the local bank and making it happen so you're able to run your property efficiently. I have to go back because in your bio, you asked me a question, and Stephen jumped onto that too, as far as that process. And the process leads to the outcomes. I think the three of us have been fortunate enough to have some nice outcomes, whether it be on a grand scale through our careers or more recently. And knowing what you've done on that beautiful story here, on the 10 unit, 6 unit, 8 unit, putting the pieces together with property management, being a construction manager, making all that happen and getting that great outcome? Mm-hmm. Are you enjoying the process more than that W-2?
Oh, 100%. It's, I mean, the W-2 has been great because like when I bought that 8 unit, I had to put earnest money down, and literally the day I had to put it down, I already had the money ready to go, but the day I had to put it down, a nice big commission check came into my account, and I said, "Oh, well, let me just take this, give it to the owner of the 8 unit." So it was like money out of my account. But yeah, it is. I mean, I still enjoy the W-2. I still like what it affords me. In most of the world, you could live on $15K in cash flow. Brooklyn, you can't. Just the sad fact. But I think the construction end, and then also the just how to set it up where you can see where it's going to go. You can see that, all right, I'm going to buy these 8 units. If I increase rent here, it's going to go to here. If I increase it here, the value is going to be here. And it's just planning that out, like planning that slow but steady march to where you need to be. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely, and in all honesty, it's been that kind of sense of pride I discussed in the beginning. Like the great thing about it, Stephen, you said it, you keep going. You want to get to that next building. But the thing is, when you get that 10, that 15, that 20, that 100, whatever you have, it's you own it. Either you own it yourself, like my 22, or you own it with partners, like the one I have up in Worcester with Matt, but or you syndicate it. But either way, that I feel like that sense of accomplishment is there because that building is yours, and it's good, and no one can really take it away from you. So that's kind of one thing that I've always loved about real estate, is that like the proof is in the pudding. That building's sitting there and it's doing well and it's making you money,
Absolutely. And even if you're not great at taking a second to stop, look around and be satisfied, you're going to continuously build on top of what you've done. So like you said, that is yours now. The proof is there. And then you're going to build on that, and that the momentum's not going to stop. You mentioned having some partnerships, some syndications. Tell us more about that. And I know you were involved in a couple different states, right?
Yeah. So I have two LPs that are out of South Carolina and Utah, which have been going well. But then I just about a month ago, Matt Damon, who's on your podcast, me and him hooked up through Will Bell Profits, as we all know each other, and we found this great 13 unit, and me, him, and 4 other partners took it down where it's a JV situation, but we're definitely the leads on it. The other 4 have some small responsibilities, but are more financial partners. And I mean that it's just all about doing new things, right? I mean, that JV has been such a great experience for me. Like now, I don't think I'll ever go back to buying stuff on my own. I looked at it before almost in a greedy sense, where like, oh, I want to buy it so I own it fully. I get all the cash flow, all that. But once you have partners involved and they can actually handle the construction, like I do the asset management, I do the investor relations. He does all the construction management because he's up there, and that's what he does for a living. That's his. He's a home builder, so he's got that skill and the connections. But that property, it's been an awesome learning experience. That's another avenue of just looking at what partnerships can do. Partnerships are everything in multifamily, I've realized. So.
No, we love Matt Damon. He was super impressive, explaining his journey to us. And yeah, he's knocking houses down and building new. So he certainly knows that game. And you partnered up with him. Your other partners are more on the financial side. Can you explain a little bit more of the Anthony Vander Meer and Matt Damon synergy? We've all, heard or experienced really wanting to have that complementary skill set with the partnerships. And you're a construction guy at this point. You certainly know that process. You've been very successful. So is Matt. Explain in detail that synergy.
So I think I think like anything. First of all, it's the personality fit. Like me and Matt, we met at one of the events and became fast friends, and we just kept chatting about. Me and him were both looking to go elsewhere. We were thinking, all right, I'm in upstate New York, you're in Massachusetts, both not the most friendliest markets for landlords. So I don't know, maybe we'll find something in South Carolina, find something in Florida. The typical what a lot of people look for. And we were at an event one day, and I said, dude, let's just come on. Worcester seems like a good market where you're at. Cash flows seem great. There's a heck of a lot more properties than where I am. So let's partner up. And besides the real the personality fit, because it's great, which is always important. We both actually have similar skill sets, but I think it's a Northeast thing. We're completely okay with kind of calling BS on one another and saying, are you sure? Are you really think we're gonna get the rents there? Come on, man. Looking at the pro forma. So he's a little bit more on the underwriting side. I'm more like on the communication side. And the partnership has been great just because, he definitely does a lot of the construction. I handle all the asset management, and I'm good. He'd prefer not to deal with, he's a good capital raiser on his own, but he'd prefer to actually do more of the construction stuff. So I get to take kind of the communication side of things off his plate, which comes back to sales. Like I can call any owner, I call around Worcester all the time, and there's never an uncomfortable conversation. Like none of that bothers me. He'd prefer not to do direct to seller type stuff. He'd prefer to just do the construction, concentrate on that. That's his lane. So my lane is more acquisitions, asset management. So I feel like the synergy, besides the personal side, is just it's great on the skill set side as well. Which as you guys know, it takes time. I was looking for a partner for a good year within the Jake and Gino community, and it just kind of it happens organically.
Yeah, it's definitely something that you can't rush. Like you said, it happens organically. I remember last time we spoke, you also mentioned a short-term rental up in the Sawgreaves area. How's that going for you?
It's going good. That's actually, that's the house that I purchased, 6-7 years ago. My kids are getting a little older, so we don't go up as much. So it's perfect because it's not. I didn't buy it with the intention to be a short-term rental, but it's just the perfect short-term. It's the perfect upstate short-term rental. It's got the pool, the pond, the stream, the whole thing that every hipster in Brooklyn is looking for. So we rent it out. When we pretty much rent it out for half the summer because my kids are in camp anyway, so there's no real need to be up there, and we keep it on and rent out. So it's not a primary business, but it still nets, when it's all said and done, it still throws us a nice chunk of cash. So that's probably, I would like to have two arms of the business, right? Have the long-term side and then have the short-term side. I think short-terms are in a little bit of a funky state right now. Not funky, but it's just so much came on the market that I'm just kind of holding for the next one, at least where I am. I'd prefer to be I haven't in that upstate New York for the short term, but it's just I got to wait for some stuff to shake out before I get my next one, And the Massachusetts project as well. I think I might just keep concentrating on that market for now. There's so many older owners there that are that own a ton of property. They bought it for next to nothing. They haven't raised their rents. This Massachusetts property, it's a 13 unit, and we're pretty much gonna add $800K in valuation in 3 months. Like 5 of the units were vacant, not because they were really that damaged, just because the guy didn't care. He didn't care to rent them, and a few of the units he has a non-for-profit in there. The rents were absurdly low. We literally left the closing, went and met the non-for-profit there, and asked them and told them, listen, in order for this relationship to keep going, we need to get the rent to here. The rent was pretty much a double. It went from $1,000 to $2,000 for 3 beds, and they accepted. They said because they knew their rents were low. So just by asking the question and just by, really managing correctly, we've taken this building, up 800K in 3 months, and they're all over that area. So,
man, okay. I know we joined that Wheelbarrow Profits, Jake and Gino, everybody we talked to, Massachusetts, New York, completely disqualifier. No one's interested whatsoever. We have discussed, Stephen. You can make money in any market. There's real estate in any market. Yes,
especially if you're good at cold calling, like Anthony.
Especially if you're good at cold calling, or especially if you're good at communicating and knowing how to manage your property, making sure that you're getting the right people into your units. But what I have to mention is that 15 unit. I was talking to somebody the other day explaining a similar template of what we look for. And he's just like, yeah, that's kind of, a needle in the haystack, where we have this longtime owner. Yeah, he owns it free and clear, whatever, trying to take that path of least resistance, but unfortunately leaving all sorts of money on the table as far as potential revenue for that property. And you're saying they're all over Worcester. How did you find that deal? And I can see why you want to stay in Worcester if you feel like there's others coming right after this.
And we found it through a wholesaler. Found that one through a wholesaler. But after getting this one with the wholesaler, I have the owner's cell phone now. Obviously, I spoke to him a few times. I know the broker who pretty much just works for this owner. I met the insurance agent for the owner. I mean, it's buying that building, but then saying, all right, this gentleman, he's in his late 70s, early 80s. He owns 300 units. After speaking to a lot of the people that he works with, the broker and the insurance agent, and I was really just calling the insurance agent because I wanted good insurance and figured, hey, why not speak to this guy? But people, they tell you things, maybe on purpose, maybe on not, but you hear, well, his kids want nothing to do with real estate. You hear that statement, or you hear, his accountant said if he, the next time he sells a building, he's going to get crushed. Then you start thinking owner financing. Okay, so if you're looking in a market that's very hot, then yeah, the owners are educated and they understand what their properties are worth. This gentleman, listen, we bought it for 1.8. It wasn't cheap, but and he bought it for $300K. He didn't even have a mortgage on it, in the 80s. So for him, he's making a killing, and I think there's plenty out there. It's just everyone's looking for the hot markets. I was speaking to a fellow investor who said he underwrote 150 properties in Arizona, and I was like, well, guess what? Get out of Arizona. It's great to chase a market that has this possible appreciation, but you don't need the appreciation when you're forcing it, when you're doubling the NOI. And in a market, there's certain markets like upstate New York, my little market. There's not as many hospitals and colleges. You have certain areas in Massachusetts, which people forgot about, where there are 5 hospitals, 30 universities. There's a biotech center. It's an hour outside of Boston. So there's a ton of forgotten markets and it's not forgotten for the people that are in them, but for those nationwide investors who poo-poo a market like that, they're out there, and I think there's plenty. And it's also, I think you got to have an end game. Like, so me and Matt, we probably won't live in the Northeast forever, right? So we can either sell it, collect the properties, get it big enough to sell it to a REIT or sell it to one investor, or, my main goal is to take my cash flow that I have now and, just so if I can save each month all that cash flow because I got my W-2, I can pretty much throw an extra 5K in a quarter of my personal money, and now we have 50K a quarter to invest in another property, either in that area or elsewhere. And that's where that perpetual motion machine just really kicks in. And in a few years, like if you can get a 2.5 multiple every 5 years on your cash, which is very doable up there, you're looking at big money in a short period of time. So to answer your original question, I think people who say there's no deals like that out there with all that meat on the bone are looking at the fancy areas.
That's a huge takeaway that isn't discussed enough in real estate in general, even on this podcast. You go to a meetup and everyone's talking about Tennessee and Florida and Las Vegas, and the newer people, the experienced people, they start looking in that area too, because everyone else is. And there are so many forgotten markets, like you said, that are an hour outside of a major city, have universities and hospitals, and these assets are cash flowing.
Heck yeah. It's all about your parameters, right? Like if you will not buy a deal that's not double-digit cash flow, then you got to go to certain markets, right? Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think there's definitely markets out there. Like, I know, Bill, your Florida property, I'm sure that sucker is a double-digit. It's going to be a double-digit just because the way you're experiencing your management. But, there's a lot of markets out there where people are trying to sell a 6, 7 cash on cash, which I'm like, what's the point, So, yeah, you got to get your hands dirty, right? It's definitely, it's not the most, it's not the most prestigious area. It's, it's not A class, but I'm okay with that.
Well, it's that template. I haven't had this exact template my entire career, but over the last 3 years when we've had this massive rent growth, so now we're just looking for that properties that, you may have $600 average rent when you can get them to $1,000. And, the owners may or may not know that it's not operating at full. They know. They don't know to what degree because it's very subjective. They may say, hey, what can I get? 800, 850. And, we may think, well, maybe 1,000 or 1,100. But, that still remains to be seen. That's your business model that you still have to execute. And once you start operating, that's what we all wait for. I think that's part of the process that we enjoy, or at least I can speak for myself. When we go in, there's always a little bit of uncertainty. We're confident that we're able to execute our business plan. But that first apartment where you get that rent at your projection, you're like, yes, proof of concept. Yep. We were right. Is it? Do you get that same type of feeling on these properties?
Oh, heck yeah. I think that's also why it's great to choose other markets, right? Like when I first went up to Worcester, Mass, I can't even say it. I need to get a Boston accent to say it correctly. But I was like, what am I doing up here? It's like, this area, there's some great areas, and then there, it's a little funk. And I trusted Matt. People would say the same thing about, my market in upstate New York. What are you doing there? Right. But then you buy that building and you bump those
making
rents.
money.
Yeah, making money. Like, exactly, And then that's the cool thing about real estate. You can try new things, different markets. Like this building has some, it has some government assistance in it, which I've never wanted to deal with, right? I'm not going to deal with that, but we're not dealing with it on this one. The property manager is. But the crazy thing with government assistance is a lot of these, you got to do a yearly inspection in order to get the HUD rate, the highest rate, right? So you got owners that just don't want to deal with that they don't want to spend the $500 to put in a new faucet and a new smoke alarm. So they keep like the 2010 HUD rate of assistance. So literally, especially since who knows what's going on with the economy, recession, you name it, we're literally going in and taking someone's rent. We're not even removing the people. We're letting them stay, and we're reapplying for the highest assistance rate, and we're bumping rents up like $600-700. And the tenants, they're not leaving. They don't care. They're happy. They're like, it's not my money, and you're going to fix my faucet and you're going to put in some smoke alarms and you're going to, it's all these little avenues of real estate that you don't know they exist and how profitable they are until you get into it, until you try something new.
Yeah, it's much easier raising rents on that nameless, faceless county that's running that HUD program than it is someone who's lived in a property that you just purchased for 20 years and may not be in the best of health or financial condition. And unfortunately, you have this business plan where you have to raise their rent, but it's this person that you have to deal with. That's much, much harder. Me and Steven talked about that earlier this morning. Those are the hard ones. But before we get to these last three questions, tell us what's going to be the plan here over the next year. You're working with Matt over in Worcester, Massachusetts. And
Worcester. You're a Yankees fan, but Anthony already said we need Worcester.
What is it?
Worcester.
Park
the car in Worcester.
Oh, kind of like lobster?
Yeah, there we go.
That's it. We got it.
So what are we doing? How are we finding that next great deal, or what size is that next great deal as you drill into this new market that you're in, and how are you going to find that deal?
Well, first I'm gonna have to perfect my fake Massachusetts accent so that I can call these owners and they don't hang up on me. But the goal is 100 units by the end of next year. So we got an LOI out with the same owner for another 26. So we're bouncing back and forth. We're gonna see where it takes us, but. We're not just gonna concentrate just on him. I'm gonna kind of ramp up I'm gonna ramp up my broker communication with every. I haven't reached out to as many brokers as I should, so I'm gonna do that. And I pulled a big list, and I'm gonna keep chugging through. I'm gonna find the great thing about software is you can find who the big owners are, right? So our my plan is to call the 10 different owners that own over 300 units and say, which are your dogs? What would you like to get rid of? So continue on. Hopefully the 26 unit sticks, but get ourselves up to 100 by the end of next year. And I think the funny thing with real estate is a lot of times you undershoot, right? Like you're like, 100, who knows? It might be more than 100. So I think, but that's the plan to keep growing the area up there and hopefully have 100 and then just get into probably some syndications, which would be great. That's probably as we go for bigger, the JV model won't make sense, and so start that and ramp up capital raising and kind of educate people on the Worcester market.
Well, I love that direct to seller approach. Calling those owners directly or whatever that technique you're going to use for that direct to seller, developing those relationships. But I really, really like that low hanging fruit and work this guy that you already have this relationship with, where he's a seller this year. This is the Collecting Real Estate podcast. They say you have to have 3 of something to make a collection. So we're going to wrap this up with 3 questions for you. Number 1, in 5 words or less, what is the most important thing you've learned since you started collecting real estate?
I think mental toughness and persistence equals success. Technically, that's 6 words, so I apologize. But to expand on that, I think just like the day job where you got, you start off with this little itty bitty territory and you got to grind it out for years to get where you want to be. Same with real estate. I've definitely heard some of your guys' stories. I know my own, where it's like you can get in some, you can get in some funks when you're doing serious renovations. And the best thing about real estate is you almost can't give up, right? You're putting a lot of your own money into it, possibly investors' money, where you got to keep going forward. So I think like anything in life, but same with real estate, mental toughness will just it'll get you through. And then once that's done, you kind of, like you said, but you have proof of concept. You got those reps in. So the mental toughness part is just that's where I think a lot of people in general fall short. They get a little soft.
Wow. I've got a
Five
lot to
words
say
and an
about
equal
that.
sign.
I was going to say
There's
that.
5 words and an
equal
equal sign, so that's good. Yeah.
Right. And it takes me back. I did a project. It was a total burnout job, and it was a 6-month process, and I really enjoyed that work. But still, that mental toughness did have to take over, because when you're doing one of those grueling jobs, burnout does come across your mind, because the mind does so many crazy things to us. Even though we're enjoying this process, you want it to just get done so you can get that outcome. Stephen, do you have anything to say about? I know you've been working a project that needs certainly some mental toughness.
Bill, you're reading my mind here. It was very fun when we started. I'm still enjoying it overall. But working on that 24 unit since June, you get to that point halfway through the year where it's just, I'm ready to be on the other side. But it takes that mental toughness to keep cleaning up the basement and scrubbing cobwebs to get to that other side.
It's not easy. No one can say that it's easy. Me and Steven joke about that all the time too. We go to these meetups, or you listen to other podcasts, and it's all unicorns and rainbows. Real estate is the best. We just reposition process, make millions of dollars, and everything's great. It's not easy.
That is what happens at the end when you take that bird's eye view, but they don't put the stories in there where you're kicking out someone who's potentially on their deathbed, and you have someone chase you out of the building because they're so mad at you, and you're raising rents on people that have lived in the building longer than you've been alive. And I'll leave it at that.
Well, I guess a lot of people will say, well, you guys shouldn't be so involved. Hire property management right off the rip, let them deal with the headache. But once again, it ain't that easy. Number 2 for you. What are your 1 to 2 year personal goals, Anthony?
My goals, and just to expand real quick on that last one, I think a lot of people don't realize it's not supposed to be easy. Like, you're not, if you want to make a good living and make good money and retire like with a kick butt retirement, like where you get to see the world, and even it's not supposed to be easy. It's not a soft pillow. Like, we're supposed to grind it out. That's what we're here for. Like, whatever your job is or your investments are. Like, I think make it. It should be hard. Hard is good. But to answer your question,
Love that.
My 1 to 2. I actually love this question because I feel like I'm always so obsessed with my business goals, right? That sometimes I forget about the most important things, which are the personal side of your life. So I got an awesome wife, 2 kids that are 12 and 9, and I spent the last 3 years working 2 full-time jobs. So definitely one of the goals is going to be spending a little more time with my kids. Me and my 12-year-old, we just got into rock climbing, so I will continue to do that. Just spend a lot of time with the family and ski my butt off for this coming season. That's for sure.
Awesome. Rock climbing. I love that. Are you doing indoor right now? Are you going to get outside and get into some seriously challenging rock climbing locations?
Yeah, so we're doing inside now, and then I'm about 30 minutes from the Gunks, which is like in the New Paltz area. It's, from what I hear, people come from all over to climb them. So that's good. We're gonna get our reps indoors, and then this summer move to outdoors.
There's a law that you're not allowed to mention Brooklyn hipsters in a podcast without also mentioning rock climbing.
Exactly. I'm going to get the best coffee ever after this too.
Right around on every street corner, right?
Oh yeah.
How can we and the listeners assist you? How do we contact you?
All right. So you can either go through my website, which is Brightside Capital RE, like real estate, but just abbreviated. So Brightside Capital RE. You can click on sample a deal to check out one of my latest deals. You can also email me. It's just Anthony at Brightside Capital RE.com. And then also, me and good old Matt Damon are going to be starting a podcast in about, I don't know, 4 to 6 weeks, maybe sooner. It's going to be called the Money Tree multifamily show. So, keep an eye out for that. And whenever we finally get our acts fully together, I'm sure we'll have to definitely have you two guys on. But I'm sure I'll reach out with some questions too. But that's gonna be fun.
Exciting stuff.
Yeah, love that name. That's awesome. We appreciate you being on, Anthony. It's been a pleasure. We went a little bit long, but this has been fun.
Yeah, it's been great, man. Thank you again for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Anthony.